Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Introduction to Exactix for Excavators. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few items so that you know how to participate in today's event. We've taken a screenshot of an example of the attendee interface, and you should see something that looks like this on your own computer desktop in the upper right corner. You're listening in using your computer speaker system by default, but if you would prefer to join over the phone, just select telephone in the audio pane and the dial-in information will be displayed. You will have the opportunity to submit text questions to our presenters today by typing your questions into the questions pane of the control panel. You may send in your questions at any time during the presentation. We will collect these and address them during the Q&A session at the end of today's presentation. I would now like to introduce the session moderator, Tim Vaughn. Tim, take it away.
Thank you, Lucy. I'm Tim Vaughn with Kentucky 811, and you will receive a survey about today's webinars tomorrow on your email, and we'd appreciate it if you can complete that and give us your feedback. You'll also receive an email in the next coming weeks that'll give you access to the recordings of all the sessions and presentations from today. As Lucy mentioned, please submit your questions using the questions panel on your screen. It is my pleasure to introduce the speaker of the next session, Dan Lucarelli from Underground Safety Alliance. Dan is the Executive Director of USA Underground Safety Alliance, the umbrella organization for Indiana 811 and Kentucky 811. He has more than 30 years of experience in the damage prevention industry. Prior to his role as Executive Director of USA, he served as the Director of Marketing and Education for PA One Call, also known as Pennsylvania One Call, providing direction and support for underground excavation and building advocacy and educational campaigns to promote the safe digging message throughout the Commonwealth. Dan holds a Bachelor of Science in Computer Science from Slippery Rock University of Pennsylvania and a Master's of Business Administration from Katz Graduate School of Business at the University of Pittsburgh. He is a frequent speaker at the Common Ground Alliance and the CGA Expo and Conference, and has been a featured author for Excavation Safety Guide and the directory of DP Pro magazine. Dan also serves as an active member of CGA, the Pittsburgh Technology Council, the American Marketing Association, and the Beta Gamma Sigma Business Honor Society. So please join me in welcoming Dan Lucarelli.
Thanks, Tim. What I'd like to do is talk today about our new platform, Xactics, and specifically how it looks, feels, and acts for our excavator stakeholder community. I'd be remiss if I didn't tell you that our mission is to lead Indiana and Kentucky in promoting safety and preventing damage to underground facilities by providing excellent coordination and notification services at a reasonable cost. We're committed to damage prevention in Indiana, and we're committed to damage prevention in Kentucky. That's what we do. So in this session, you're going to learn about who is using Exactix. There are some states that are already using this new platform, and we'll go through when they launched and how they launched and who they are. We'll spend a few minutes on why Indiana and Kentucky chose the Exactix platform to replace our current platform and software for the call centers. I think everybody in this room wants to know when we're going to launch Exactix. We'll talk specifically about that. And more importantly, how can you help us with the launch of Exactix? We have some specific plans, we have some specific requests, and we have some specific timelines that we are going to ask our excavator community to help us with the launch of Exactix. And then finally, we'll open it up for questions because I think we're going to have a lot of questions. So these are the one call centers that are using Exactix today. Arizona 811 was the first one call center to launch Exactix last October, right around Halloween, followed by Sunshine 811, Dig Safely New York, which is the one call center for the state of New York except for New York City, and Dig Safe New England, which is a consortium of 5 states who is launching Exactix literally 1 week from today. That will be followed by Indiana and Kentucky in March of next year, and then South Carolina 811 in November of 2021 after we launch in Indiana and Kentucky. So there are a consortium of states. Question is, why did we choose Exactix? Well, we're looking forward through the windshield, not backwards through the rearview mirror. And really, Exactix presents to us an opportunity to improve damage prevention in Indiana and Kentucky. Exactix is state of the art. It was built with leading components and is only about a year and a half old. It's built 100% for the cloud. This gives us all kinds of opportunities to take advantage of current modern technologies so that I don't need a lot of resources to run Exactix. It will run in a browser. That means I can have a smaller computer or just a browser in the call center, reducing our member costs, and I can run it from a laptop or a tablet in the field if I have an internet connection. Exactix is written from the ground up to be mobile. Everything that Exactix can do runs just fine from a tablet. And many functions are available for Exactix running on mobile devices like a phone. Exactix is rock solid. Since its launch last October, states have taken approximately 2 million tickets in Exactix, and the states that are running it have yet to experience any kind of issue. It just simply works. And Xactics, we're really excited because it's going to support damage prevention in Indiana and Kentucky with much better communications amongst stakeholders. This is the biggest feedback that we got whenever we did the feedback tour in January and February. You may remember that we visited the DPCs, we went to the IURC, we did as many meetings as we could, and we sent out a survey to 57,000 stakeholders. Of the 500 different kinds of responses that we got back, a majority of that talked about specific and general ways to improve communications amongst stakeholders, especially at the ticket level. So we're going to talk a little bit about that and how we plan on increasing communications amongst stakeholders at the ticket level. Xactics is mobile. What you're seeing is a video that we've taken on a cell phone from I believe, an excavator perspective, where the excavator has access to the tickets that they've created, the responses that the member companies have sent with response to that ticket, a list of tickets that my company has created. Xactics is now able to aggregate excavators at a company level. So if you have 4 or 5 excavators creating tickets within your company, you can see all tickets amongst your company. There's a sub-aggregation at the office level. So you can, depending upon permissions, be able to see tickets at the office level. And if your company is comfortable, tickets at the entire company level as well. What you've seen is actual running code on the development server that we're working with. What you'll also see is that we have loaded production data into the development server so that when we do testing and configuration and looking and testing, we are comfortable with the data that we're seeing. So we can spend more time thinking about the interface and what the interface is or is not doing, rather than spending time to validate the data that we're trying to use for testing. This is a very, very different approach than implementations from other vendors and implementation schedules and methodologies from other vendors as well. What you may notice was an Xactics logo on an iPad that when you click, it launches the application. This is going to log in. This is the actual interface that you'll see. Again, this is a development server, and this is the interface that you'll see as an excavator. This excavator is named Excavator, and apparently he also, I'm told, has a sister named Ella. So what you're seeing here is the responses to the tickets that this excavator or his company has placed. The ticket, the map, list of tickets created, the ticket on the left with the map of the ticket on the right. And as I scroll back and forth and go from tab to tab, I can see all of the details surrounding the ticket. You may have noted in today's morning introductory session that tickets will have the ability to add attachments to the ticket. We spent a few minutes on that this morning. Those attachments will be available here as well. So we have a ticket. We're not changing the output format of the ticket because we don't want to break our members' parsers or automation in receiving those tickets. So additional information that's attached to the ticket will be available on this interface. And this interface is on an iPad. What's unique about Xactics is that you'll have exactly one user ID for the system. And that user ID can be as simple as I'm only allowed to create tickets, or as complex as I am a member company and I create tickets and I respond to tickets and I maintain my company's notification area on the map and I do some administration for some things on behalf of my company for my users. What Exactix is really strong at is the ability to add permissions to the user ID so that you don't need 2 or 3 or 4 different user IDs to perform 2 or 3 or 4 different roles. This is available at the user level and is configured by the One Call Center whenever we work through your user ID and the permissions that your company grants you to do within Exactix. I think it bears repeating that we want to walk through again, taking a ticket on Xactics. What you're seeing here is the role of an administrator. So from an excavator perspective, you only had home and tickets. From an administrator perspective, in the One Call Center, we have access to the full system. So as the roles and permissions get added and changed, the interface automatically changes to allow you to do the roles that you've been assigned to. We're going to create a new ticket here. And you'll see I'm putting in a company ID. The company ID is a new level of hierarchy if you're familiar with our current software, and that your contractor ID is associated with a company ID, and you'll be able to aggregate those tickets together at the company or the individual level. You'll note that the interface is clean, it's elegant, it's web-based, and it is fast. As I scroll through the fields, if there is a mandatory field and I skip past it, it will turn red. It does validation on the fly. And I'm creating a ticket in the development system for Florida because there's a feature in Florida that is going to be implemented in Indiana and Kentucky that I'd like to show you. So I scrolled past that field. It's a mandatory field in Florida, so I had to go back and correct it. So apparently the Holy Moly Mole lives in Florida, and the Holy Moly Mole has a gnome garden in the front yard, and he is going to add another gnome to his collection. So this ticket is for the excavation in the gnome garden. So the system automatically knows the cross streets to Greenbrier Boulevard. It will present them on a list. It's either within a quarter mile, or I can tell it how far if I know that. And everybody who knows me knows that I am not a touch typist. So please bear with me as we work through these fields. I will tell you that I am not qualified to take tickets in our call center. So you'll notice above the map that you'll see a link that says attachments. I'm going to click on attachments, add an attachment to the ticket, and now that attachment is available to anyone who has the ability to see this ticket. And I know there's an attachment there because there was a red 1 next to it. The system will also give me the contact information for each of the utilities that's on the ticket. There's my ticket. So in the next session at 3 o'clock, we're going to expand on this concept of attachments in terms of what we're trying to accomplish with Xactics in Indiana and Kentucky. We get this question a lot. We're going to get this question more. When? We are on schedule to launch by March 31st of next year. We have our production data running in the development system and have had the production data running in the development system since June of this year. Once Dig Safely New York launches next week, 4IQ Systems will devote 100% of their development resources to Indiana and Kentucky for the configuration of the system, for the testing of the system, for the training of the system, for the testing of the system, so that we are well on schedule to launch by March 31st. It's an important date. We have a lot of work to do. And the question is, how can you help us launch? We expect to have a system ready for testing by the end of this year. We know we still have to do some work. We know that we'll find some things that we have to correct, but the intent is for us to have a system for us to begin testing and training by the end of this year. So web ticket entry users, I'm going to ask high volume web ticket entry users to pay attention to your email. We do not want you learning about the system after we launch. We do want you learning about the system and testing the system and completing all of your training on the system before we launch on March 31st. That means that you'll receive an email that will instruct you on how to create your new user ID in Xactics. Once you have your new user ID, we're going to ask you to go through the web-based training to learn about the system. We're going to ask you to do some duplicate work, to create your normal tickets in our current software, just like you do to run your business, and also to create additional tickets that won't be used in production in the Exactix system. We want you comfortable. We want you trained. We want you ready to go so that when we do launch the system, you can start entering tickets into the new system immediately. And quite frankly, we're going to start at the top of the list for the folks that enter the most web tickets today in our current software and work our way down the list. So if you have interest as an excavator in getting on the list and getting the invitation so you can do testing and so you can do training in advance, I would encourage you to place your tickets online. And the more tickets you place online between now and the end of the year, the higher you'll be on the list and the earlier that we will contact you to create your user ID, to gain access to training, and to start testing and telling us what's wrong with the system. To be clear, the more that you get into the system before we launch, the more training that you complete, the more testing that you do, the more comfortable you will be with the system, with Xactics, when we do launch at the end of next March. With that, I will open up the floodgates for questions.
All right, thank you, Dan. We are now going to begin answering the questions submitted for today's presentation. As a reminder, you can still submit questions through the questions pane in your attendee control panel. Dan, the first question is from Howard Smith. What do you define as a successful launch?
Wow, that's a really good question. To us, a successful launch is going to be our members not noticing that we cut from our current software to Exactix. And what I mean by that is that we have to convert all of our existing data into the new system overnight. And then we have to start taking tickets in the new system the next morning. And we have to deliver those tickets to our members. Many of our members use automation to receive their tickets. They use parsers. They pull them into their work order management system. They use other means. They don't send them to an individual. They send them to a computer. And in order for us to launch successfully, that means that the ticket format, the output format of the ticket, is not going to change by one single character. So that whenever we cut over to Exactix and start delivering tickets, all of that automation and all of our members can still receive tickets without any changes. It's important to us. The second part in terms of a successful launch is the ability for us to convince excavators to test and train on the system before launch. The more that we're able to do this, the smoother the launch will be. And I'm also going to ask our members to do the same thing. We'll ask them to create a user ID. We'll ask them to get into the system. We'll ask them to do training on the system. And we'll ask them to tell us what we need to fix in advance of launch. The more of this work that happens up front, the easier and more successful the launch will be. I hope I've answered your question.
Okay, great. The next question is from Sean Looks. Is there a limit to the size of the file to attach JPEG and shape files?
Of course there is. I don't know how big it is, but it should be a couple of megabytes, which I believe is going to be big enough for almost all uses.
Okay. Our next question, has the requirement of providing the township been eliminated?
Has the requirement of providing the township been eliminated? That's a great question. I know that we have been working on removing the township requirement with our current software, and I expect that that will be true also of the new software. What I will point out, and I failed to point out at the beginning of this session, is that if you have a specific question about Xactics, you can put it in the chat session here, or you can send an email to the email that's on the bottom of the screen. exactix@usa811.org. So I would encourage you to put your really deep, specific questions in an email. And if we don't get to them today, especially, and we'll answer the questions today as best we can. But to answer that question, I think the answer is going to be yes.
Okay, next question. Is there a design ticket option for surveyors and engineering firms?
Yes.
Okay. Can emergency locates be entered online, or will they still need to go through the call center?
That's another really, really good question that lots of folks have been asking us about. I will say that the ability for us to do tickets, emergency tickets online is not a technology question. It's easy to do. What's preventing us from doing emergency tickets online is Indiana 8126, which specifically states that emergency tickets must be given to the association orally. And orally means talking to somebody on the phone. So as we make progress and as we consider changing that in the legislation in Indiana, the technology will be easily able to accommodate that once the legislation has changed.
This next question is coming up quite a bit. When can we expect the training to start?
When can we expect the training to start? As soon as we can. We know that we have a bunch of work to do in terms of configuring the system so that it adheres to Indiana and Kentucky's business laws or business rules, modes of operation. We expect that we will start sending invitations for people to create their user ID and to create and participate in their training, I suspect by the end of January or the middle of February. So end of January, beginning of February, start paying attention to your email to create your user ID in Xactics, either Indiana or Kentucky, and then we'll walk you through how to participate in the training so that you can understand the interface, understand how to create tickets, and help us understand what needs to be corrected in the system before we launch.
Okay, great. What do you consider a high volume web ticket user?
I have a user that creates about 5,000 tickets a month online. And I also have users that create one ticket every year. I would think that we're going to start at the top of the list with the 5,000 a month person and work our way down as deep as we can in the list as we go. I don't think that we'll extend it down to the occasional user that puts in 1 or 2 or 5 tickets over the course of a month or 2 months or a year. But certainly if you're creating, I think 5 or 10 or 15 tickets a month, you should expect to see communication from us on how to create your user ID and to participate in the training.
Is there any interaction between the mobile device's GPS and the program?
Yes.
Okay. Not all member utilities are utilizing the positive response in 811. So will this encourage them to participate when Xactics launches?
We certainly hope so. I believe the positive response through the one call system is a critical component for damage prevention in Indiana and Kentucky. Many states, not Indiana and not Kentucky, actually mandate positive response through the one call system. That said, we're going to do everything that we can to encourage our members to participate in positive response through the one call system so that the data that they contribute in positive response is available in the conversations that we're trying to create on mobile devices in the field. So we'll do a lot of work. We're going to use our most persuasive methods to encourage everybody to use positive response through the one call system.
Next question, can the excavator do white lining on this screen?
Can the excavator do white lining on the screen? I don't know the answer to that question. We haven't gotten that deep into the configuration of Xactics yet. So if you can please send that as a question to exactix@usa811.org. When we do have more clarification of that, we'll be happy to respond to that email.
Okay, there are two questions in this one. When creating a locate ticket now, a majority of ours are newly built subdivisions. How does Xactics allow us to create the dig site if it doesn't auto-populate? And secondly, how up-to-date is the map used to create the dig site?
We're in the process of updating our maps today as we speak. Those updated maps will be imported and converted into Xactics when we launch. We do map updates approximately once every year, and we spend a fair amount of effort adding attributes to those maps as we become aware of them. For example, subdivision names, sometimes some additional streets if we're aware of them. So we do the best that we can to keep our maps up to date. You will see the map and have the ability to draw a notification or an excavation area on the map when you create the ticket. And I think the maps are going to be better than you're used to in our current platform, and we're working really hard to get them better over time. I hope that answered your question.
Can the program recognize the location if the user is standing on the dig site and pull the ticket?
That gets back to yes. The answer to that is yes. What we did not show you is that there is a function in the phone app and the tablet app that allows you to see tickets near me. If you are an excavator, you will see the tickets near me that you have created. If you are a facility member, you will see the tickets near me that you have received as a result of wanting to be notified in this area because you have facilities nearby.
Okay. Are there going to be any changes on the ticket types?
No.
Okay. The next person likes the contact list feature. Will it include the locators that are hired by some utility owners? And will we be allowed to call them directly, or should we still contact 811 if a locate is missing?
We're hoping to provide more contact information on the ticket and in the ticket attributes that surround the ticket. This was a big ask when we went through our feedback loop in January or February of this year. The information that we're going to expose at the ticket level will be information that our member utilities will ask us that will allow us to expose. So if the facility owner wants you to contact them directly, they'll provide us with contact information. If the facility owner wants you to contact their locating company, they will provide contact information for the locating company. And that's the information that will be exposed that you saw whenever I created the ticket in Florida. I hope that answers your question.
Will current tickets be carried over into Xactics, or will we have to re-enter them once it goes live?
All tickets from the previous 5 or 6 or 7 years will be imported into the new system.
Great. Is the system going to use satellite view?
Yes.
Will Exactix be compatible with DigCheck Pro from USIC?
Yes. Again, compatible means that the output format of the ticket sent by Indiana 811 to its members will not change. The output format of Exactix will be exactly the same output format of our current software.
How soon after this is launched will the old software be eliminated?
The day after.
Will there be the ability to communicate in a blog with the utility operators?
I would encourage you to attend the next session. That is positive response through the one call system.
Will you be able to input latitude and longitude to create locates?
Yes.
Is the integration with Indiana and Kentucky system the same as Sunshine 811?
I'm not sure I quite understand that question. Let me answer this way. Arizona 811 launched first. Florida 811 launched second and added some features to Xactics. Dig Safely New York launched third and added a bunch of features to Xactics. Dig Safe New England is launching next week and has added some features to Xactics. We are next on the list and we have the ability to take advantage of all of those features or any of those features because Xactics is built with all call centers in mind. That means that we're taking everything that has been developed to date and configuring it to work with Indiana and Kentucky. And we've also had some extensive conversations with 4IQ, the company that develops Xactics, in terms of what we'd like to see in features and functionality, most of which center around our concept of a two-way conversation between stakeholders involved with a ticket. So next session, we'll talk a little bit more about that in the abstract, and I'll give you a sense of where we're going and how we're headed, and my hope for the features that will be included with Xactics when we launch in March.
Okay, next question. Will we ever be able to do second notices online instead of having to call?
Wow, we're getting deep, deep, deep. I think the answer to that question is yes. It really is a configuration and business rule question, not a software functionality question. So I hope I've answered your question.
Do I need to have a user ID for each foreman if they would be a read-only option, or could it be shared between several? Thank you for creating a company-level sorting.
We are going to strongly encourage each person who has any interaction with Xactics to have their own unique user ID. This gives us the ability to keep track of what folks do, so that when somebody asks me a question about what a folk or person has done, I can answer the question accurately. This means that permissions may be different between users. You want a user ID for each person. It may be only read-only to look at stuff, but I would still encourage a unique user ID for each individual that has any interaction with Xactics.
Okay, next question. Do the attachments have to be in JPEG format, or will PDF be fine?
I think that we will support a variety of file formats, including JPEG and PDF.
Will we have the same sign-in for Indiana and Kentucky, or will it be separate?
Same sign-in for both states.
Can second notice tickets be submitted with the software?
Second notice tickets can certainly be submitted with the software if I'm an agent sitting in the call center. As I discussed previously, second notice notifications is really a business rule, not a software limitation. And it's something that we're going to take a look at from a business rule perspective.
Okay. Will Xactics let you continue where you left off from a previous ticket when you have multiple miles of locates to submit, or will you have to input all information for each ticket?
I think you'll have the ability to copy a ticket and change whatever has to be changed from ticket to ticket.
just sorting through some of the other questions. Will Kentucky, we already answered this one. When the locator has completed his or her locates, will the ticket display that my dig site has been located and ready?
Well, that's a really good question. Hadn't really thought about that. If you can please send that question to Xactics at usa811.org, we'll make sure that we address it during the development and testing of the system.
Next question.
That's a really good idea.
Has the pandemic affected the implementation and launch of Exactix?
No.
Okay. Someone who was watching the other Exactix session for members, a fellow employee was watching that session and they were told that you can do emergencies online. What is the difference between excavators and members calling in or doing tickets online?
That might be incorrect information because submitting emergencies online is not a software thing. It is a Indiana 8126 legislation thing. So we'll make sure that we revisit that question to the person that has asked it.
Okay, next question. I utilize the GPS coordinates in the current 811 locate tickets. Will this feature still be available?
I believe the answer to that question is yes.
I believe that was the last question. I know we have only a minute left in this session. Can wait for any more to come through while we're waiting. Someone would like to know if this has already been answered, but will the current user IDs no longer be good?
Yeah, unfortunately, I believe that you'll need to recreate your user ID in the Exactix system.
All right, I think that concludes our questions. Oh, one more. Will this accept damage tickets?
Yes.
Okay. I think we can wrap up questions there. And as noted on the screen, if you have any additional questions or very specific questions, you can email Xactics at usa811.org. I want to thank Dan and thank you for everyone for attending today's webinar. If you have any questions about today's conference, please visit the contact page on the conference website. Thank you for joining us today, and we hope to see you in another session. Have a great rest of your day.